another episode of the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net. MetalNexus.net, where you can keep up to date with all your local news, music reviews, interviews, and so much more. And keeping up with all things Mr. Daniel Terry. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm trying to keep up to date on some things. I'm running horribly behind. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it feels like we haven't really talked much this week. You and I have both been working our asses off, both at our quote-unquote day jobs and as well as me traveling about 300 miles to and from to go do this interview with Phil Labonte of All That Remains.
Worth it, I think.
Yeah, it definitely, this interview is short. It's only like 15, 16 minutes, but it doesn't feel like a very short interview, and I don't know if that's just due to the nature of like bouncing around from a couple of different topics, or just Phil's really candid answers on everything. But it was kind of interesting, and it was the first interview I've done on a bus.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, it definitely was content packed. He had his serious voice on, like 100%. Like he was very just seemed very I don't want to say sober is the right word, but just very stops and actually thinks about what she said before throwing it out there. I like even at one point where he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a canned answer for that.
I know, and that was like a really, I don't know if anyone's ever just flat out said I don't have a canned answer for that, but it made me feel really good that I asked a question that he didn't have a canned answer for, and especially given what we were talking about at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of humor and a kind of a serious conversation, and your guys' chat about Oli was handled with the type of care that I really don't see in a lot of these interviews. It's like, instead of being like, hey guys, how's everything going? It seems like a lot of interviewers lately have just been like, so Oli, this has got to be devastating. It's like, yeah, dude, it's fucking devastating. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, I had even kind of made the comment because when trying to do some, Dan and I constantly are riding this fence of how much research do you do to where you're not doing too much and you're being robotic versus having a natural conversation. But I kind of was looking to see how much they have talked about it, the passing of Oli, and how it correlates to getting Jason, how everything's been going with the touring so far and so forth. And yeah, there is just a lot of, I don't know if egregious is the word I want to use, but there's just, it's just not really handled with tact, I guess, maybe.
I've definitely heard some straight up asshole questions asked, and it's just like, dude, if somebody came in asking me questions like that about a friend of mine, I'd be like, dude, come on, that passed away. I'd be like, dude, come on, but I think I really liked his response, when you were asking him, do you feel like this was a good send off?
Yeah.
For Oli, and I liked that he gave more of a behind the curtains. He's like, dude, he's infinitely better than just what you hear on All That Remains, which is something I think a lot of people don't think about. It's easy to say, oh, do you think that this is him at the top of his game? And he's like, dude, the top of his game was like literally the clouds.
Right.
And so I thought that was a better, more kind of heartfelt response instead of him either coldly telling you, I don't want to talk about this, or, anything like that. And it definitely was a lot more pleasant for me to listen to this time around. Just because I wasn't fighting, opening band number 345. And so that was a lot of fun for me. I thought it was good, man, only for 15, 16 minutes. And but it's very to the point. A lot of good information in there.
Well, it's kind of funny, though, because I used to be of the mind that I didn't want to have any repeat guests. Or if I did, it was so spaced out from when the last time they had come on. And I'm starting to kind of realize that actually maybe that's the thing that's kind of nice about having a repeat guest, is that there's a little bit more familiarity between the two people, or whatever, and so you're kind of picking back up on a conversation that you've already had.
Yeah, it's true, and he capped it off certainly like, yeah, we could talk again. That's kind of a good indicator of like, yeah, you're a press person, but I don't see you as just like another press person. You're somebody that I actually enjoy talking to. which, opens up the door for me for next time, hopefully. And, I can get some of my, see how he feels about, my brand of throwing down questions.
Speaking of throwing down, I'm currently enjoying a Big Lake Brewing Lake Hazed and Confused. It's quote-unquote a crushable New England IPA with blackberries.
Interesting.
It is. I decided to, over the next couple episodes, it's easy to drink what's local. But it's so weird. I don't know if you're getting this in St. Louis, but it's one of those things where Michigan is just, has so many breweries and distilleries and such that it's like, I was at the beer store and looking at the singles, and there were so many beers that I didn't even know these places existed, let alone the various types of beers. And it's getting to the point where you're just kind of like so overwhelmed by like, well, that sounds good, but like so do 17 of these other beers.
Right.
But I also don't want to pay $5 each for one.
It can be really hard to tell sometimes, that's one of the big ones for me is like, I'm really guilty of just buying a beer because the can or bottle looks cool. It's like, for me, it's part of the appeal. And I've definitely had some really horrible beers as a result of that. And the most recent one that I've actually gotten was it's Rogue Brewing, but it's, or Rogue Ales rather. And it's the Dead Guy Ale. And unfortunately, it doesn't make me feel as good as the band Dead Guy makes me feel, which is a little frustrating. However, it was okay, but it was definitely more middle of the road. And I don't know if it's just me, but it was, I was expecting something really strong and kind of ended up with something that was just a little bit more drinkable.
Yeah, this is I'm not super big on New England IPAs. Coincidentally enough, when I was out in Rhode Island, they had a New England style IPA that was really good, and I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm sure it'll pop up in my Facebook memories eventually. Actually, probably in the next 3 weeks is going to be my guess, because the trip to that is getting ready to pop up. But no, like I didn't realize, obviously, there's DIPAs and so forth, but like this New England style IPA, I feel like is something relatively new in the last 2 to 3 years that I've not seen anywhere else. So I feel like this is kind of like one of the newer styles of beer that's still kind of an untapped subcategory of beers, because like I said, I haven't seen too many of these out and about, and usually when you see them, it's just like, oh, here's so-and-so's New England style IPA, and that's it.
Yeah, and half the time it's like, I love it, because at first I thought it was kind of a gimmick. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, a New England style IPA. Like, Jesus, how many more styles of IPA can we have? But there definitely is something a little bit more, if you can call IPAs fresh, about it. And I don't know what it is, if IPA is just becoming like America's new light beer, or what the deal is. But I know that once I went down the IPA path, I've never really looked back. It kind of makes, because I used to be really into stouts, and now it's hard for me to really enjoy a good stout, because I'm like, yeah, but this IPA that I'm drinking is like bursting with flavor, and a stout's like eating like buttered noodles in comparison. So it's hard to really go back to something that's so much more bland tasting. And like, I know it's good. I know it's like a me problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't deny that it's completely taken over.
Yeah, I'm actually enjoying this. At first, like the first couple of sips, I haven't had an IPA in quite a while, and let alone a New England style. And at first I was like, I'm kind of regretting getting this, but now I'm about halfway through this can, and I'm like, okay, there it is, like the good blackberry flavor, a nice, that New England style kind of IPA bites, but it's kind of light and refreshing, like you were just saying. All in all, I would definitely like this. I would like to actually see if they have this on tap and see how this is on tap, straight from the source.
Oh yeah, that might be cool. Yeah, I'll have to keep my eye open for it. I don't think I've seen it, but then again, a lot of the times I've just been in and out of gas stations. I haven't gone to an actual liquor store in a long time, so I have to stop over by Friar Tuck's and see what they've got going on.
And speaking of what's going on, let's get into my conversation with Phil Labonte of All That Remains, and we'll talk to you guys afterwards. Maybe it does. And again, maybe my questions make it seem like I don't give a fuck because I ask some of the same things. But we'll kind of get right into this. I have the pleasure, once again, of sitting across from Phil Labonte of All That Remains before a show here in Pontiac at the Crowfoots with In Flames. I think this is the Legends Tour. Is that what you guys are calling it?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what In Flames calls it. This is it's kind of an off. We did 2 weeks with In Flames, and then we started a headliner with Attila and Escape the Fate and Sleep Signals, and this is an off show. So we jumped on this show. Attila's playing, I think, in Toledo tonight, and then we jump back with Attila and the rest of the guys.
Yeah, because I think I was the asshole who tried to ask for Attila too, and they're like, they're not on this day.
Yeah,
like,
wrong tour, buddy.
By a day or two. Regardless, though, since I've talked to you last, Victim of a New Disease finally has come out.
Yes, sir.
Indirectly broke the news of a new record even coming.
Yeah.
Which I kind of felt like I ruined all of your promotional planning.
No, I mean, I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't cool to come out, or
That's
it wasn't
true.
cool.
That's true. I was kind of surprised to see so many people, fans and critics alike, really loving the record and calling it a quote-unquote return. The thing that's interesting about that to me, though, is, once it was kind of known that DL was the one producing the record, everyone gives credit to DL for being the person who, well, obviously he's not going to put out some pussy shit, so DL is the reason that All That Remains is back. But forgetting the fact that you probably all had to pre-write this in your own studios and so forth.
Look, we went to DL because he would get the sound that we were looking for. So it's to say it's because of DL is, I guess, partially true. But we picked DL. It's not like we had to go to DL.
Right.
Not like, and it's not like, we would have done a different style record had we gone to someone else. We went with DL because we knew that he would be able to get the sound that we were looking for. So if people dig it and they want to say it's because of DL, I don't care. If people dig it, cool. Then, you give credit to DL, fine. But the fact of the matter is, we're the ones that said we want to do, a record like this, and we're the ones that said we got to find someone that's going to get the sound we're looking for, and we went to DL because we were looking for that sound. So whoever they want to give credit to, I don't care.
Just not the band.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Credit DL, credit the label, credit my mom. It doesn't matter to me. Who cares?
I kind of wanted to know, too, it seemed like you guys rolled out the album very quickly. It wasn't, you drop singles very quickly, but instead of having, we'll say a 5-month promotional outroll, I think you more or less did it in a month and a half.
Yeah,
it was super quick.
We wanted it to come out last year. We wanted the release to be in 2018. And so the time was a little compressed because you can't put a record out in December, because no one pays attention. Everyone's too focused on the holidays and all those things. People that work in the music industry stop working after Thanksgiving, and then they don't come back to work until January. So it was compressed, but that was because we wanted it to be released in 2018. We didn't want to wait until first quarter 2019.
Do you feel that the quick rollout of it, though, actually kind of helped get fans really interested without bogging them down with so much shit, so it's still fresh?
Maybe. I hadn't really given it much thought, so I don't have a canned answer for that.
Hey.
It could have. I did like the fact that it was, once we announced, I think it was a month and a half, maybe 2 months tops.
Yeah.
And so I really liked the way that we kind of, built the announcement up a little bit over the course of 2 weeks or whatever. And so I felt good about it. But yeah, look, not that I'm a little apprehensive to make this comparison just because people are going to go ahead and twist it around and crap on us. But, Eminem did a record, he didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And dropped it at midnight.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, by the way. So the way that records come out nowadays, you can do the 3-4 months of promotion and blah, blah, blah. But I kind of feel like people's attention spans are so short that trying to do a shorter promotional period before the record comes out might be a way to get people's attention a little bit better. Hit them with, hey, this is coming, and then hit them with content, once a week or whatever for a month until the record drops, and then they can get it. Because if you've got it in the can and it's ready to come out and you're sitting on it, it's going to leak.
Right.
And so the best way to prevent a leak is to have as much ready to go and then have a very short amount of time to, or at least an abbreviated amount of time to really ramp up the promotion for it.
So in prepping for today, the big struggle, and I don't know if any other media person has expressed this, it's kind of hard to talk about anything that's happening now, because if we want to bring up Jason, we fall back to default to Oli. If we want to talk about the new record, sort of sadly we got to go back to Oli. Yeah. So I'm going to ask some of these questions, and I'm not trying to dig for shit. I just, honestly, there really wasn't a way to kind of talk about it without bringing up
Well, I mean, look,
thing.
Oli was in the band for 20 years.
Right.
Oli was the only other original member from the first 5 people that joined All That Remains. So, I mean, that's something that we expect, and we understand that there's a lot of questions and stuff. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes it seems like even when I was pulling up interviews with you recently, I just kind of kept finding the lead on the thing was Oli this, Oli that, Oli that. And it's like, all right, I get it, but there's got to be a way to talk about something and try and maybe not to bring it up. So all that being said, with this unfortunately being the last record that Oli was on, do you feel that this is really a really great way to kind of go out for him, really showcasing everything that he has to offer as a guitar player all in one package?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Those kind of questions are really hard because Oli was such a well-rounded musician. Mm-hmm. What he did with us and what he did for All That Remains was just a sliver of what he did as a musician. Right. I've said this before in press. As much as people know Oli for being, the guy on stage and being a metal dude, he was probably the best well-rounded musician that I had, that I'd ever spent any time with. Right. The guy could play 7 instruments. The guy knew music theory in and out. He was literally the best teacher that I'd ever seen. He could explain music theory in a way that no other teacher that I've ever seen could explain it. He had remarkable patience, and the way that he could articulate the ideas and transfer that knowledge was beyond anything I'd ever seen. And I play guitar. I took lessons when I was a kid and into my 20s, and I'd had multiple guitar teachers, and hands down, he was the best guitar teacher I'd ever seen. So, whereas everyone knows Oli because of All That Remains and because of the stuff he's done with All That Remains and because of the music that he wrote for All That Remains, there was more to him. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that I can say that Victim of the New Disease is... It doesn't do Oli justice, and that's not a knock on the record because I think it's a great record. It's got a ton of cool stuff that Oli came up with, but if you're looking for something to represent what Oli was as a musician, he was so much more than just one record.
Yeah.
I think if you look at our catalog, that's a good representation, but you have to go way deeper than just one record.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of the unfair thing of when someone wants to leave a band, and you can kind of okay, I'm going to put it all onto this record or whatever. So, not knowing, and no one knowing how everything was going to pan out, it just kind of is one of those things where I was thinking oh, do you guys as the band feel wow, this is, a really great record for him to this is going to be the last one, a really great record for him.
Yeah, I do. I think that the record that we wrote with Victim, I think that it is Oli going out on a high note, I guess, but it's just maybe because of how well I knew him,
right?
It's not enough. It doesn't cover it. It doesn't encapsulate Oli as a musician or as even as a guitar player. He's so much deeper than just one record, you know?
Right. I'll quickly touch on the Grammys. Were you surprised to see so many of your counterparts in the music industry kind of coming to bat for Oli and for Vinnie Paul of not being included? Namely, Lizzie Hale, I think, was the biggest one that really kind of got the bandwagon going.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised because there's a lot of really good people in the metal community.
Right.
Like there's a lot of really thoughtful, warm, sweet human beings, and Lizzie is a great, is the perfect person to lead that charge, as a heavy rock ambassador. I'd follow her to the ends of the earth. She is. I can't come up with anyone better than Lizzie Hale, and I'm not surprised that the Grammys, did what they did. I mean, I not that I have any expectation to ever be nominated for a Grammy, but I think Randy did the right thing. Randy from Lamb of God.
Right.
He didn't go, and he auctioned off the thing because metal is subversive. Metal's supposed to be for the people that don't want to fit in, that don't care if they fit in. So when people get upset because the metal community is shunned, to me, I'm just like, screw them. Why do you care? They've crapped on us forever, And I think I said something like that on Twitter. I was like, the Grammys have screwed up every single time since Metallica and Jethro Tull.
Right.
Why would you expect them to do it right this time?
Fair
So
point.
for as far as I'm concerned, I'm not surprised, and for the people that did care, I'm sorry that they were kind of bummed out. Maybe I'm a little cynical,
right?
But I mean, I don't expect the Grammys to get anything right at all. At least when it comes to
to metal,
and
right.
So no big surprise to me. They just did what they do normally, which is blow it.
Kind of in wrapping up, something I kind of thought of in light of Jason kind of coming into the fold and very quickly for you guys to keep still doing shows and so forth. Something I was kind of thinking of was how the correlations between how quickly you seem to have to fill in for people too, between the Five Finger Death Punch run and the Killswitch, with Howard end up kind of bailing or however that got spun or whatever. So I kind of figured you're in a very unique position to actually understand what it was like to be in Justin's position, or Jason's position, to have to fill in on a moment's notice, and the enormous pressure probably that it is. So I kind of wanted to get your take on, in either of those situations, what is it like as soon as you either get that phone call or that email from the band or the publicist or the management or whatever to the moment you're on stage? What is that process like for the artist itself?
I think for me it was probably different than for Jason.
Okay.
Because Jason is he is in the class of elite guitar
definitely.
players. So for me, it was just sit down and just jam it in my head as much as I could. And so when, like, for instance, when they called, or when the guys in Five Finger called, the first thing I said to Zoltan was, send me a set list. Like, literally, he said, hey, what are you doing? Could you come and, fill in for a couple shows? And my response was just straight up, send me a set list. I was like, I need to know the songs that I got to do, because I need to start trying to remember the lyrics right the fuck now. like 20 minutes ago, I needed this.
Right.
Jason, I think, was probably about as familiar with our stuff as I was with Five Finger. Okay. I probably knew most of the choruses, or about what they were. I was familiar with the melodies. Didn't know the verses, So I had to learn that stuff. Jason probably was familiar with kind of how the songs went and the arrangements, didn't know exactly how the riffs went and stuff. But, I mean, this is what I do for a living.
Right.
So, I like to think of myself as a professional. So, if you're a professional, you don't complain about the fact that you don't have much time. You don't complain that things aren't the perfect situation. You've got a job to do. Get up there and do it. And if you can't do the job, then don't say yes, right. Because it's unprofessional to say I can do something and then not be able to do it. Right. So there's no room for whining. There's no room for complaining. There's only room for get it done because you said you're gonna do it. So, and I think that that's kind of the way that Jason looks at it too.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this one. We'll have to do a part 3.
And we can talk again.
Huh?
We can talk again.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. So next time you're in Michigan or Grand Rapids specifically, look forward to maybe doing another one.
Cheers. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. So that was my conversation with Phil Labonte of All That Remains. Dan couldn't be there to enjoy the very cramped spaces on that tour bus. But yeah, what did you think of that as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, boss, I wasn't willing to drive 9 fucking hours to do a 15-minute interview.
Why? I drove 3.
I definitely did enjoy. I would have driven 3. I don't think I would have driven 9. Not for 15 minutes. I guess it depends on the artist, though, right? Because I regularly drive 5-6 hours out of my way to see Zayo most of the time when they come through the Midwest.
Right.
But their next stop's supposed to be St. Louis, so there you go. No, I thought it was a good chat. It was very to the point. There wasn't a lot of filler, which I liked. You've talked to Phil before, so there was a little bit of familiarity there, and not having to, because sometimes you feel like when you haven't talked to somebody ever, there's a little bit of beat around the bush that has to be gotten out of the way. And with Phil, I mean, you and him pretty much just jumped onto it. It was like The Empire Strikes Back. And so that was a lot. That was a lot of fun. And according to Phil himself, we're looking at probably having a Return of the Jedi here before we know it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will say there was probably another good 15 minutes worth of questions that I had lined up and ready to go that I definitely didn't get to ask, and I know Phil saw that. Obviously, with my preparation or over preparation, as I like to do sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit on it just now and even in the intro. I feel like even though I am a media person, I feel like I think half of this job sometimes, if you want to call it a job, is to not be an asshole, first and foremost. And
hey, that's hard for some of us, okay?
Especially for me sometimes.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that is that I think if you come in there, obviously show that you've put in your work, even if it's only for 15 minutes or whatever, and that you ask good shit and you can tell that you've actually done your homework, then I think the people you're interviewing tend to be more apt to want to have a conversation with you. Something Phil even kind of has said, and a handful of other people have said, is even, after the fact of maybe something making some headlines or whatever, they go, at least I know that I stand behind everything I said. Secondly, at least I know that the interview that I did wasn't a waste of my fucking time, because I can't tell you how many times I've done an in-person and it seems like the person just used it as a cheap way to get a free ticket to the show. And,
right.
I never see these interviews posted anywhere. I never get tagged. The band doesn't. And it's so a lot of times, I guess it can be from their perspective, an instance of, a time waste, when really the touring sometimes there's a lot of downtime, but there's still even stuff that you got to do or maybe have to do for yourself if you run a business or something as well. And so, especially given the unique opportunity to go do this on the tour bus, it was kind of, I definitely wanted to, I didn't know I was going to do it on the tour bus, but I'm glad I was fully prepared like I typically am, because then I didn't feel like I was also impeding on their personal space and completely wasting their time in their home, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so much give and take too to this whole interview thing. Sometimes I feel like, we're doing like they're doing us a favor just by talking to us.
Yeah, for sure.
And the reality of it, though, is that it is very much a give and take where, like you said, people show up to do an interview or they'll show up to quote unquote take pictures, and, you never see the pictures posted online. You never hear the interview come out. You never see any of that stuff. And it's like really kind of, will lead to an environment where, artists won't be as willing to, we always complain that, oh, they always want to see our numbers and see our stats and see all this stuff before we talk to them. But I think a lot of that now is just kind of weeding out the bullshit. There's only so many hours in the day to talk to somebody, and if they're not going to take it seriously, then why does the artist waste their time? And that's what I like about an interview like this is that, it is going to get shared. It is going to get posted, and it's going to be, it's going to be give and take. You're going to find things out about Phil Labonte in the interview that you didn't know. You're going to very much find out about what their plans are, what their outlook on life is at this moment, following the tragic events of just the past few months, and that's the kind of thing that I enjoy about doing a show like this is that, yes, they absolutely are doing us a favor by even talking to us, but I'd like to think we're giving something back.
I think for me, and I definitely didn't say this to you leading up to it, I was really kind of stressing about what I was going to say and how everything was going to go because, obviously the Phil thing, that broke the news of the new record coming out and very quickly, and we talked about the rollout and all that kind of stuff and how quickly they did it. So, I mean, I was tied to this new record because of that, like basically being the person who, the site or the thing that broke the news of, hey, here's a new record coming. And then, like, a week later, here comes Fuck Love. Like, boom.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like maybe even Phil was like, okay, like, maybe he said that to a couple of people, and it was just a matter of, like, okay, whose thing's going to get picked up first?
Right.
And then, I ended up talking to Aaron when that tour was done. And by the time we did that interview and put out that interview, again, about a week later, the news of Oli passing happened. So it's just been, I was kind of thinking about how all these things just keep happening every time I talk to one of the people in this band. And I don't know, I don't know. I just felt very, I feel like every time I've talked to someone, there's just the level of respect that they give us. Being a very small DIY podcast. And so I feel like any and every time I talk to anyone from this band, I feel like there needs to be this sense of respect given back to them. And especially given how kind of ensconced in everything we were there for, about a month and a half. At least from my perspective. Maybe I'm making that up and it didn't feel that way to you or anybody else, but it feels that way to me.
No, I definitely feel it. The way it all just kind of creeped up on us. I think we were actually doing an episode when when the news broke. For some reason, I'm always the bearer of bad news whenever we're doing these. I'm like, hey, John, have you looked on Blabbermouth? What? No. Oh my God. Like it was. And I actually remember that episode taking a very big. It had a huge change in tone for the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, I think Phil's a good dude, despite people maybe not always liking his opinion on things. But I always enjoy hearing you talk to him, and I'm hoping the next time that we do this that I'll get a chance to come on, even if it's one of those like. You're on the tour bus and you hand him your phone. And you're like, say hi to Dan, and he'll be like, hi Dan, and that'll be it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm definitely hoping next time. Phil kind of made a mention of this, but next time that we'll get some more time to do something. And I would love it to be something like how it was with Aaron, where maybe the tour is done and we schedule like a 35-40 minute conversation with him, where there's no time limit, there's no show, there's no press, there's nothing else to do. It's just Phil giving us a nice decent amount of time to just kind of talk through some shit. But always appreciative of his time. I definitely feel like he is a very in-demand artist in the metalcore scene, very outspoken and honest, and I always appreciate that about him. Whether I agree with everything he says or not is completely irrelevant, but I do gotta say, if you get the opportunity to go see All That Remains right now, go do it. I posted on my Facebook about how All That Remains was playing a very lean and mean set. Starts off with Fuck Love. I mean, you're going into like some of the more brutal hits off of The Fall of Ideals. Like, I would say the softest song, if you know, on the whole set was What If I Was Nothing. And I think if I understood the Phil correctly during the set was they had a little bit of extra time, so they had time for one more song, and that was the extra song they threw in. Otherwise,
wow.
It would have been 2 weeks and 6, I think, was one of the other ones. But yeah, it was just basically all the brutal shit off of the new record, and just hits and blast beats and all that kind of serious riffage, and nary really a clean verse or a clean chorus for most of their like 45-minute set or so. So if you get a chance to see them right now, I feel like it is a band who is reinvigorated, and if you were not a fan of the softer stuff, don't worry, you're not going to get much of that.
Yeah, I think the only mistake that they've made in this particular set of tours that they've been doing is going on tour with In Flames, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, that was a slightly interesting crowd. I don't think I think a couple of tours ago, the In Flames, All That Remains would have made a lot more sense. Based on the set I saw, it would almost be like the only way. And granted, I ended up leaving before In Flames went on, for obvious reasons, but. The only way that I think In Flames would have been able to put on equally as good of a set is if they would have basically stuck from everything from Come Clarity forward, and then whatever heavy songs they may have that are quote-unquote newer. But to me, All That Remains did the best thing of playing all heavy hits off the new record, and then all the heavy hits from the Fall of Ideals, Overcome, and a few other of the albums, and basically just kept it real pissed off. And to me, it's like that was when All That Remains is at their best.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. If I don't think it's coming to my town, but if it did, I definitely would. I'd watch All That Remains. Probably, I don't know. I might stick around and see In Flames out of some kind of morbid curiosity, but
if Cloud Connected wasn't as far into the set list, I would have stayed, but I had no interest in basically sticking around to the very end to hear Cloud Connected.
Can we talk about this for a second? Are we allowed to talk about this?
Sure.
So, I haven't talked about the new In Flames yet on my podcast, so this is like a world exclusive. Yeah. Like if anybody actually gives a shit what I think, but the whole thing is that I don't know what album people have been listening to, because I'm just seeing it all over Facebook and media, and I'm seeing it on all these review sites that it's the best album that they've ever put out. It's the perfect combination of ingredients. And I listened to the album, and it essentially made me feel physically ill while I was listening to it. And I realized there's two types of people in the world. There's people that know what I'm talking about, and there's people that like anything after Come Clarity by In Flames. And I wonder, and I'm starting to develop a little bit of a theory that if a band is around long enough, like, it doesn't matter what the quality of their output is, people are just going to be so excited to see a familiar name come across their desk that they're like, oh yeah, this is definitely awesome. This is the best thing they've ever done. I mean, as far as I can tell, their newest album like doesn't even distinguish itself at all from their previous album, Battles. And that's a little disappointing. And I think the real reason behind all of it is that I don't hate In Flames. I actually love In Flames, and just like I love one of my kids. And so I just want to see them do better,
I think that's the thing, and I, admittedly, like I just said, I haven't listened to an In Flames record, honestly, since Come Clarity, where I listened to the whole thing. Come Clarity had its moments, and it kind of, I think, helped carry it through its not so great things, in my opinion. But with that being said, I wasn't a big fan of the single they put out, where everyone's like, "Oh my God, they're back." To me, it's like you have everything from Clayman, Horacle, Jester Race. Shit, all those classic records. And other than, obviously, members coming and going, it just makes me wonder, like, what the fuck happened? Because some people would even say by the time you got to... What is the one with Cloud Connected?
That's a Reroute to Remain.
That's right. So on that record, like a lot of people were starting to be like, "Oh, they're starting to go pop on that record." And
Yeah, I heard a lot of that when it came out.
And to me, I don't necessarily know that it went pop. I think it just had better production. And that's something I'm a stickler for. But
it was definitely geared to widen the In Flames audience, but it was done with enough respect to their legacy that, like, in my book, it got a free pass. And maybe people feel that way about the later In Flames albums, but, like, with there being so many of them in a row that have just been god-awful. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. And I don't like to be a totally negative guy. I just don't think that Anders has a good singing voice for the most part.
No.
And it's frustrating to hear all the shit that they throw onto his voice to try to make it sound good. And it's kind of like, dude, this guy is an excellent harsh vocalist.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. But even his harsh vocals now sound like, I think a reviewer said it best on their Soundtrack to Your Escape album, where they said the vocalist sounds like Jonathan Davis from Korn getting his foot smashed with a hammer, is what the screamed vocals are starting to sound like. And it's just so disappointing because this is a band that, in the late 90s would have been considered legendary, like spoken in hushed conversations like, oh yeah, and then In Flames, and they got this album out called Colony, and it's so fucking good, and with In Flames now, it's just one of those, like, a lot of the metalcore bands that came out in the early 2000s lifted their song ideas and riffs and everything from In Flames, like, directly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if those dudes hired a lawyer, they would be millionaires and never have to write another note.
That'd be nice.
And then by the time you get to Come Clarity, though, like, they're basically copying the metalcore bands that are popular at the time, who in turn had copied off of the old In Flames. So it's like, it's kind of like John takes a high quality photo of something on his phone and then sends it to me. Well, then the cellular carrier fucking, lowers the quality of the original picture he took, so then I get that. But then to preserve it forever, I pull out a fucking Polaroid and take a picture of my phone on it. That's the type of quality drop-off we're looking at with In Flames.
Yeah.
I just had to get that out there. I'm sorry. I know it has nothing to do with Phil or the conversation. It's been on my mind for a while, and like you said, we haven't talked in a while, so I felt like our listeners just needed to hear that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really couldn't have said it any better myself. Like I said, I dropped off many years ago, and I have no qualms with saying that. And it seems like a lot of longtime In Flames fans are the same way. Just like All That Remains. I feel like this was the record, honestly, that brought a lot of old school fans back. And it definitely seems like a lot of people really dig this new record. So excited to see what this record does for them. Kind of in wrapping up, if you would like to keep up with All That Remains, you can find them at allthatremainsonline.com. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at All That Remains, or Twitter at ATRHQ. And you can find Phil on Instagram and Twitter at PhilThatRemains. And if you would like to keep up with MetalNexus.net, you can find them where I just said, or you can go to Facebook at Metal Nexus, Instagram at Metal.Nexus, and Twitter at Metal_Nexus. Dan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook under Daniel Terry. You can find me on Twitter. I almost said Instagram, but I'm not on Instagram because I suck. But on Twitter, you can find me under Discuss Metal Dan, and you can find my other podcast, Discography Discussion, at discussmetal.com.
And if you would like to keep up with all things the podcast, you can find us. And here's the fun thing. I just changed this. Simply enough, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at BrewSpeakPod. I got tired of having to do different names and shit like that, so simply put, we are under BrewSpeakPod. And if you would like to email us, you can email us at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. And if you would like to keep up with our show sponsor, The Bean Bastard, you can find them on Facebook and Instagram at The Bean Bastard, or you can go buy their delicious coffee at thebeanbastard.com. Let them know that we sent you if you do buy a bag. We're still doing the contest. It's not going tremendously well, so keep that in mind. But we are giving away the coffee scrub. Once we get up to... Fuck it, I'll change it now. If we can get up to 600 likes on Facebook, I will pick a person at random to give it away to.
Just ask your grandma to like the page. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, just tell people to like the page. Simple as that. And with that, we are going to get out of here. So for the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I'm Dan.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.